Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Chewy, how are you, sir?
Not too bad. End of my working week. It's a good.
Nice.
It's a good day.
Very good. Look, first up and straight away, apologies to everybody. You didn't get any notifications or anything tonight. I mea culpa, completely lost track of time. I was literally, I've got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but I was literally just talking to someone in my studio, and I was like, oh yeah, you know, live stream at 9 o'clock, and then I looked down at the clock and it was 8:51. I honestly thought it was 7:51, and I thought there was an hour to go before, so I completely lost track of time. And I apologize if you didn't quite get the notification, but we're here. We're hanging out. We're together. We've got a few stories to tell, a few things to look at, and we're here. So Chewy, again, I saw you at 90 seconds to 9 o'clock. Good to see you again.
I tell you what that was like, Pat. As I was like, oh, it's 1:45. I better go and get ready for it. My usual thing is I check Twitter and Facebook and share it around to my own personal pages. Chuck something up on Mastodon.
Master what?
Nothing's there. No. All right. Well, I don't know what the agenda is, so I'll just jump into StreamYard. There's no room set up.
I'm sorry.
And I felt like that dude was like, hey man, let's all hang out and we'll go and do this thing. And then you turn up and nobody else, and they're like, we changed our mind. Didn't bother to tell you.
It's that Flight of the Conchords song where they were talking about, I'm not crying, all my mates, I want to go into town, and my mates tell me they don't want to, and then I go into town and I meet my mates all in town. Is that how you were feeling?
Yeah, you're 100%.
So I apologize, but as I can see, Free Soul coming back on. Good to have you, Free Soul. Good to see you survive Gabrielle and Rissington and Hawke's Bay. So we're very good to be without you. Also, Free Soul says still without power and isolate. So the truth is, Chewy, without being flippant, I was actually kind of spiritually joining with the people without power, and thought that I'd do it all about emergency. It was an emergency for us. So I kind of wanted to, find kinship with people. Kinship.
Now I feel foolish for thinking otherwise. Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah. So yes, no, we're not being flippant about that. But I great to have you back, Free Soul. Good to see you. Good to say that you're in here. And we appreciate that you guys are here and you are with us. I thought I might share something with you tonight. Do you want to do a text here while I bring up a photo? You do a text. Go on. You want to do a text?
Yeah. You did the thing about Free Soul there.
Yeah.
And also Simple. Oh no! Tested positive for COVID today for the first time. You were doing so well. Isn't it gutting? I felt like that I'd got so far through it without catching it that I just felt absolutely gutted when I did.
Yeah.
But 100%, man, like ripping through the schools like wildfire in the Manawatu.
Yeah.
Still around. Yeah. Absolutely still around.
So good to have you back. Now, I want to tell you a little story, right? And the little story is, it's a little bit self-indulgent, and I apologize, but I am aware, and I'm aware that sometimes we have a story to tell and it resonates with other people because it resonates with their stories to tell. Now, most of you who watch regularly know that I'm on a bit of a health kick. I'm at about 54 kilos lost right now. That's about the number I'm up to. Now, what I found is I have a narrative in my head, okay? And the narrative in my head is, you're the fat guy. You're always the fattest guy. You've always been the fattest guy in every single room you've ever been in. Now, sometimes that was right. But no matter what I did in my life, that narrative was in my head. And I'm just starting to come to this realization that that's not necessarily been the case. And I guess my encouragement to people is to say, you know, like I'll show you a photo. My kids were going through old photos of mine, and they came across this photo. This is me at about 25, Chewy. And I'm a fucking machine. Like Like that looks like someone in the lock position of rugby. That is a large lump of an Irish man that reminds me of my grandfather, who, when he came to New Zealand, worked on the railways. A big lump of a man. But I look at that back now and I kind of go, you wasted so much of your life not sort of celebrating, for want of a better description, the body that you had, always having this story in your head that you are always the fattest guy in the room. And it's just simply not true. And I found this photo, and there was a part of me, not to sound too sort of, light and fluffy, but who kind of grieved for this guy in his mid-20s who actually, when you look at it, is a beast of a man. And still at that moment in my life, feeling like I'm always the fattest guy in the room. I can't compete. Looking at people now in their 40s and 50s who I know for a long time, and now looking at them getting all a bit portly and porky and podgy and going, yeah, but at least you didn't have that in your 20s. At least you had a part of your life where you weren't like that. I've never had that. The truth is, I did have that on some level at some point. And it was just a little story I wanted to share, kind of to go, I don't think we as a species are particularly good at celebrating what we are now, right? No. And I think we should all do that more. And I look at myself now, and I'm still probably 20 or 30 kilos overweight, even though I'm down 50-ish. But I looked at myself walking past a mirror, past a window in town today, the reflection. I'm like, I'm pretty good there, son. And it's really different getting closer to 50 than 40 and starting to be like, if only I could have had this in my 20s. If only I could have had this feeling in my 20s, because what do they say? Youth is wasted on the young. Because you get to this age and you're like, if only I could have celebrated myself like this back then, even though how I am now is still not back to what it was then. But back then, I was always the fattest guy in the room. Now,
were you the fattest or were you the heaviest? Because you're a big unit anyway.
I'm a unit, bro. But that's the story I told myself.
You're tall.
Yeah.
You're very tall. So, you would dominate a room anyway. So, yeah. They're in the wrong mindset. You just go, oh, I'm the biggest, but not in a good way.
Yeah. The thing is, that photo of me when I was 25, right? I'm not that good a shape today, but I feel 1,000 times better about myself physically today than I did when I was that 25-year-old. And I'm not trying to be too self-indulgent, but I like telling stories that can hopefully resonate with some people about where you are and you are right now. And it's something I wanted to share this evening.
There's a very kind offer in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. Kia ora, good to be back. Still catching up on last week's. Oh no, that's not the. Oh well, it's not the comment that I was going to hit you with, but it's a comment that I had starred anyway. It looks like we've got quite a few in the chat that are from the East Coast that are affected by all of this.
Good to see you.
Good to see you guys coming back online. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's the offer. Come and help dig silt in the Hawke's Bay for a week, Pat. That'll put you right.
Yeah, that'll the back won't go down too crash up with that. But yes, so it's a silly little story that I came across in the weekend. My kids are doing a cleanup of their room, and amongst their cleanup of their room and their crap in the garage, they found a box of mine full of my old photos, and that's where it came from. I've got another one. Maybe I'll do a photo a week. I've got another one to show you when I was about 17 and I had like an undercut. It's pretty cool. Me sitting next to my mum, who's since passed. I actually probably one of my favorite photos I've ever had of myself. Before we get into that, let's just say very lovingly, thank you to all our patrons. And I want to say also welcome to KJS. KJS is a brand new patron. KJS is not on the patrons list yet because I thought I had an extra hour. But KJS, and I think KJS is from the UK because it's a pounds value. You can come in, Gil. Come on, come get on your mat. You're all right. You're okay. Come on. Come on. Oh, you're coming to see me. All right, come here. Up. There we go. Sorry, I just got to say hello. Hello. Oh, look, say hello to your fans. Where are you? Move this. Say hello to your fans. There they are.
Oh, it's Anala head.
Yeah, I think. Oh, she's gone. So g'day and thanks to KJS, and thanks for coming on board. We appreciate you having on board every little bit. And speaking of patrons, thank you so much for joining us on Friday night. We had a whole lot of fun. The super chats went bananas. We took in $150 of super chats. I think primarily because we had Byron with us, and I said halfway through the actual show, anybody who gives a super chat tonight, this money will be getting spent on beers with Byron. and that's what we're going to do. So thank you so much for the super chats on Friday night. They will be getting probably spent on Thursday night. So Thursday night's show may be either a pre-record. I'm trying to set up a couple of conversations this week that I will record outside of the time, so it'll be new content, and it will come up on Thursday night, and we'll be out having beers, or there may not be one. So thank you very much to all the patrons. We love you guys to bits, and as we always say, just remember, if you become a patron of our show at patreon.com/Big Hairy News, you instantly become 22% more attractive.
Hey, so, Pat.
Yeah.
Before we move on to something probably a bit more substantial, since we're doing old photos,
this
I think people will get a kick out of this one.
Oh, good Lord.
Which one am I?
You're the one on the far right with the scarf on.
With the floppy 90s hair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the few photos in existence of me without a beard, funnily enough.
All right. Well, let's do one of these things that you do in the radio world where you do a teaser. At the end of the show tonight, Hubba Huge, I'll show you another photo of me without a beard. And it's from when I was trying to figure out how old I was, because I'm in the photo with my mum, and it's in the house that I grew up in that I left when I was 21. So I'm like older than 15 and less than 21. So I'm wearing a basketball t-shirt, so I'm probably 18 or 19. So I'll it's on my phone. I'll send it to myself. And at the end of the show, if you stick around, you'll get to see that as well. Hubba Huge. All right. Let's get into things, shall we? I don't really know where to start here, because as I said, people will have seen the live stream come up at 7 minutes to 9 because I lost track of time and I thought it was 7 minutes to 8. So I've got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Oh, I guess, isn't it? Don't we have to start here? Don't we have to? We
bloody do.
Yeah.
We bloody do. Yes.
We have to. Now, old Karen Plunket, we haven't spent a lot of time with Karen this year. Oh gosh, hello. Let's go back one. Because, why would you? But this came up, and this has done the rounds at the moment. And I want to make it very, very clear from the outset. There are allegations that have been denied. And we might actually have some honest held opinions in this conversation. But at the minute, this is before the employment court, and we don't know what is the truth in this story. So we will report it as I guess the media has reported it, and then maybe we'll offer an opinion or two on it. But the opinion will be an honest held belief, and it will not be based on any absolute knowledge. It'll be based on opinion, based on things that we have witnessed Mr. Plunket do via video and in person when I did a podcast with him. So there's an employee who alleges broadcaster Sean Plunket yelled at her and punched the desk. Now, first of all, before we get going, and you can see I haven't highlighted any of the text, so we're going to have to go through this bit by bit. The yelling at her, I thought, let's just read through it, eh? An editor at the new media startup The Platform was yelled at and sworn at by founder Sean Plunket before he, quote, punched a desk standing a metre in front of her. But while Plunket largely accepts what he describes as appalling behaviour, he rejects a personal grievance claim lodged by digital engagement editor Annie O'Brien, who says she feels the workplace is too unsafe to return to and lacks sound dispute resolution process. Both Plunket and O'Brien gave evidence before the Employment Relations Authority in Wellington on Thursday and Friday. The full picture of the claim isn't yet clear. Very important to put that out there. With the 2-day hearing, listening to testimonies only, submissions from both sides are to be heard at a later date. Chewy, you can go first while I look for the next bit to read.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that both of these people are, in my opinion, terrible people. So I do feel like this is that scene from Godzilla where the guy's just going, let them fight.
Oh, yeah. Remember that scene?
Yeah.
So this is Annie O'Brien, right? Annie O'Brien, let me go back to the imagery now. Annie O'Brien understood she was employed as a manager with responsibility over staff. During her testimony, she spoke of an altercation with Plunket on May 3rd, where O'Brien was, May 3rd, that's very early on as well. That's very, very early on, because we started up about February, March, And I don't think Plunket had started by then. I don't think. Maybe he had just, but I remember us wanting to get ahead of Today FM. And I think we have more listeners than Today FM as well, and get ahead of them. So this is May 3rd. O'Brien says he was telling another staff member to, quote, stop playing around on social media. Old man shouts at clouds. O'Brien then called out to Plunket to correct him, basically expressing that we needed social media content, she told the authority. She said the broadcaster then stormed over to her desk, shouting and swearing and pointing his finger at me. She said he told her, pack your shit up and go. Why would the New Zealand Herald not write the word shit? Anyway, he demanded I go into a small, and we don't, a small side office. I told him I was frightened and didn't want to go into a small space with him. A meeting was later held at a cafe between Plunket and O'Brien. She says at this meeting, hearsay, he apologized for his behavior, but Plunket denied this.
Now, in this case, I believe Plunket.
You believe that Plunket denied it?
It's important to believe Plunket for that particular statement. I don't believe he apologized at all.
O'Brien alleged a further incident on June 3rd where she was emailed by Chloe Wright, a director of the company. O'Brien replied, copying in Plunket, who says became upset at not having been contacted in the first instance. Well, that's got nothing to do with Annie O'Brien. If Chloe Wright went to her and not him, that's to do with his relationship. If it's true, allegedly. Plunket gave evidence that he was angry an employee had been in contact with another director, which was his responsibility. It's like I've worked for enough radio companies in the past that I've had interactions directly with the CEO. Imagine your manager saying, you should not speak to the CEO. You should come through me if you want. It's like, what? 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 Another incident occurred June 7th, during which O'Brien says Plunket punched a desk. If Mr. Plunket was particularly stressed or heard something he didn't like, he had a tendency to raise his voice or get angry at times. Now, this testimonial I actually believe. In my opinion, I believe, because I've heard how he talks to guests on his radio show when he doesn't like what they're saying.
It definitely, it's not like one of those things where you read and you go, oh, it doesn't sound like that person.
Yeah.
You're 100% it sounds like him.
After the June incident, O'Brien went home and didn't return to work. Another meeting was held the next day, including with company director Wayne Wright, who flew down specifically to meet with the pair. It was here Plunket said he, quote, apologized unreservedly. The story goes on to say that he apologized unreservedly, but he did not accept the idea that he punched the desk. He said he slapped the desk. So I don't know whether that's splitting hairs or not. Giving evidence, Plunket denied that he had aggressive demeanor in the office, but broadly accepted O'Brien's accounts of what he said was inappropriate responses in times of high stress. The main point of disagreement was Plunket said he slapped the desk on June 7th as opposed to punching it, because if you've got a small woman in front of you and you slap the desk as hard as you can, that makes a big difference to how they will feel than if you punch the desk, because slaps can't. I mean, like we've all seen in the 1930s movies, slaps do nothing, eh? They do nothing at all. Goes on. O'Brien then was spoken about that Judith Collins gets involved. Judith Collins said some unkind things about O'Brien. Who was Mitchell? John Mitchell, former press secretary of the then National Party leader Judith Collins, gave evidence about his experience working with O'Brien in her previous job at Parliament. Mitchell said he initially found O'Brien diligent, but alleged he and others were later subtly undermined by her. He said she was responsible for white anting, undermining an organization from within. I've never heard that term before, white anting. No, I don't even know what's in it, like it's an analogy for. And labelled her behaviour sneaky and devious. Caitlin saying she's not a small woman, by the way. I guess, Caitlin, I would say pretty much every woman is a small woman to me. I haven't met Valerie Adams. I'm sure when I do, it'll be like, she'll be a big woman, but that's how I see it. And that's because I'm a sexist misogynist. We all know that. Mitchell further claimed that Collins and then Chief of Staff Megan Wallace were aware of trust issues. Goes on. And there was a little bit in here which was interesting to do with when they were talking to Sean Plunket. Under cross-examination by Bucket, Mitchell also revealed that Plunket rang him directly, asked if he would be prepared to speak with his lawyer. He said Plunket was told to contact him by Judith Collins. Giving evidence himself, Plunket was asked by Bucket if he had been in conversation with Collins. He said he did, but would not be drawn on what was said due to journalistic privilege, which is horseshit. You can call on journalistic privilege when you are writing a story or when you're using it as a source, not because you're a journalist and you're talking to someone for your own means. That's not what journalistic privilege is. So the meeting adjourned for 5 minutes where Plunket sought further legal advice. He returned and answered the question. I simply uttered her name, and Ms. Collins responded, "Oh God, is she at it again? She just can't help herself." I told her I don't want to get into it, and she said, "Woe betide any man who manages her." She said I should talk to two people, one of which was John Mitchell. That'll probably do us for now. So there you go, Chewy. Allegations made that Sean Plunket is an asshole in the workplace. I mean, that's the allegation. An arrogant, aggressive asshole in the workplace. Honest held belief from me would be, yeah, I can see that. What about yourself?
I think we're dealing with a brisk exchange of views between some absolutely detestable, horrible people. And I think when I first saw the story on Twitter, I think the words I used were, "It's hard to muster up a single fuck when there isn't a good person involved in it." I mean, I know Annie O'Brien's been responsible for some absolutely detestable things, and has worked with some absolutely horrible people that I strongly disagree with their worldview and their entire lives.
Yeah.
And the fact that she was involved with the platform, it just, you know, if you see a turtle upside down on a fence post and you think that's definitely not where you should be, it's not the vibe that I get from Annie O'Brien on the platform.
That's not where you should be. Like, you saying that's
no,
actually,
she's 100% where she should be with other horrible people.
She fits in there, you're saying?
Yeah, horrible opinions being disseminated to horrible people.
Yeah, I don't know too much about her or about them, but I know of what you speak when it comes to her organizations that she's been involved with. I don't think we can get into trouble legally by saying this, but Sean Plunket is an aggressive asshole to some of his guests on air. Why would that stop in the office? I guess that would be my opinion, is I could believe this allegation because that's basically how he performs on his platform. Why would that then get turned off when he turns his mic off?
And as we've noted, very definitely, specifically against women.
Yes. Very true.
He's got form for it. So being a woman in his office and being able to see how that plays out, or see how he's behaved in the past.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Jesus, you know?
Yeah. And look, I'm not being careful because of any other reason other than I do, and Chewy, you'll attest to this for me. I do like to make sure that we're fair and proper. And the fair and proper thing at the moment is to say there have been allegations made. They're in before the employment courts at the moment, and those were the two sides. One side saying, and the other side saying, one side basically saying he's an aggressive man who I was fearful of and he acted appallingly. The other side saying she's a nutter and she's got form on doing this kind of thing before. And that's all we know right now. And I guess, I don't know anything about Annie O'Brien. Maybe you can offer an opinion on that, Chewy, but it sounds like what you're saying is it's not necessarily unbelievable to think the thing about, her shit stirring or troublemaking. Maybe I don't know that. That's not my opinion. I don't know.
I don't know that aspect of her. I just know the positions that she's taken. I mean, basically, she's a TERF, so I don't like her because of that. She worked with Judith Collins. I don't like her because of that. And she worked on the platform, so I don't like her because of that. So yeah.
Gareth's kind of echoing what you've said. Sounds like a peaceful workplace. Plunket, Annie, Queen of the Turf, New Zealand Turfs, and Devlin.
Yeah. Like if these people were on an island out in international waters, absolutely perfect. I think where it's all gone wrong is someone's given them a media company.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's
I want some Lord of the Flies-esque thing out in an island where they can't hurt anyone and they have no contact with the outside world. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I guess what I will do with this story is go watch the space. We will cover more of it when we know more of it. If there's anything, is there anything in the text you want to actually mention from that conversation we've just had then?
Two echoing thoughts, really. Fleas and dogs and all that. And leopards and faces.
I thought it said leopards and feces for a bit. Maybe it's
No,
the same
leopards
thing.
and faces. Like
Yeah.
when I voted for the leopards eating faces party, I didn't expect them to eat my face.
Yeah, it's a modern way of saying that. What's the poem about? There was no one left to fight for me. You know, that sort of thing. Even
And
more white
just
ants are
confirmation.
termites.
So yeah, termites undermine. I hadn't heard that phrase before, just the same
I
as you. So
I thought people
we're
H was
learning.
talking about white pants, and I don't think you don't wear white pants after Labor Day. Is that the rule?
You and I move in very different circles. I'll wear white pants when I damn well won't.
All right. Okay, guys, I would really like you to we're going to move on now. Now, this is an interesting story because it's sort of a week old, this story, but Media Watch on RNZ did a quite interesting analysis of Newstalk ZB and how Newstalk ZB covered Gabrielle. And I'm going to play you some audio, and it's sort of last week's news, but the conversation that I'm beginning to have is, why did Newstalk ZB en masse follow this line of opinion? And you'll hear that it started on Sunday and it went through till Tuesday. And it's not just like one host with an opinion. It's almost like we hear about Fox News sort of getting direction from the top, whether it's purposeful direction, we want you to say this, or whether it's they just employ the people that they know are going to give them their opinions. It seems that the allegation for Fox News is that the hiring of the staff and the managing of that staff is to put a particular message out there. This, to me, feels like a particular message across the whole station by many talk parts. So let's start. This is, I think his name's Tim Beveridge. He does a Sunday afternoon show, I'm pretty sure. He's not one of the headline names, but this is where the whole thing kind of started. And we're going to pick up some conversation from Radio New Zealand.
And, you know, I just have the sense that maybe we need to take a bit of a breath in the media with our hyperbole and the motive language around it, because I'm not sure if it's really particularly helpful in some of the media coverage and the metaphors that are used. And of course, you know, that, you know, media, we also out to tell a story and things like that. But I'm being polite because privately, I just look at some of the coverage and go, well, this is just getting ridiculous.
That's Newstalk ZB's Tim Beveridge admonishing the media for being what he saw as a bit OTT about the threat posed by Cyclone Gabrielle last Sunday afternoon. Just hours after he called the cyclone overblown, News Hub at 6's Karen Rutherford was barely audible over a blustering gale as she crossed live to presenter Laura Tupou from the Coromandel.
And with slips predicted on that road in the coming days, emergency services particularly are concerned that they may not get out by road, and they're certainly not going to get out by air, Laura.
Karen Rutherford live from Whangamata, Tēnā.
So that was Sunday afternoon. Now, I have to do a bit of a mea culpa here and a bit of a bit of an honest, you know, be a bit honest with you, is that I was working for Newstalk ZB. It was either 2010 or 2011 when bird flu came through. And I can remember me and Petra Baggis used to do a radio show on Sunday nights called Sunday. And we ended up talking about bird flu. And I was a bit like, you know, a lot of the news about it. I remember talking about how CNN had reported on it, and they really had talked about, you know, what could happen. But at the moment that wasn't happening, but it was a projection of what could happen. And I remember talking it down a little bit. And like getting phone calls from people going, well, we'll see how you feel about it when one of your children dies from it. So part of me, when I start hearing this conversation from announcers, is like, is this their opinion? Are they kind of going, we'll wait and see? Or is there something more going on here? And as you'll hear as we go through some of these clips, the thing that I find most interesting is the doubling down. And then once they're proven to be wrong, the no retraction, which is a much different from going, we've had these warnings 10 times before, and the other 10 times it hasn't equivocated into anything. You know, this time it did. So the next day is like, holy shit, I was so wrong yesterday. We haven't had that part of it, which makes me feel like it's more of a narrative they want to post, Chewy. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it always seems weird when you have ostensibly a platform that has a variety of views, and they have very much seem to be in lockstep. And you know me, I hate to be the conspiracy guy, right? But in a radio station, it's very easy to get everyone all together and go, right, this is kind of where we want to lead this week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and just from a crisis management point of view, because we had this around other big events like COVID and stuff like that.
Yep.
Is like, if you are warning people and you are wrong, then that's cool. Nothing happens. If you are warning people and they take action and it does happen, then hopefully nothing bad happens. There's no downside to going, well, look, we've got meteorologists here. We're looking at the satellite map. We have all the tools to tell us that this is bad. We've got projection maps. It's bad. Do something about it.
Well, and the other thing,
when you've got people like Hawkesby taking a fucking Instagram of a grey sky, and going, wow, I don't know about this. I'm still having my Chardonnay on the deck. The thing, how can you live yourself?
Well, but the thing to remember as well is this is not an isolated incident. This is, 10 days after New Zealand, Auckland got 3 months worth of rain in 24 hours. So you can't look at this as an isolated incident either, because even if Gabrielle in and of itself hadn't have been as bad as they predicted, it could still have been really. I was talking to a mate of mine on the Sunday afternoon. He was fine in the first one, but then he ended up digging trenches. They live, there's a creek at the bottom of their house. He was digging trenches for Gabrielle because he wanted to protect himself, right? Now, if he had been wrong, that was fine. But I said to him, so is the ground still sodden? And he's like, absolutely. So in other words, the sponge was full. There was nowhere for the water to go. So even if it hadn't been as bad as what Gabrielle was, it still could have been bad based on what had happened 10 days earlier. So that's what I don't get. Now, you mentioned Kate Hawkesby. Let's play this clip now as well. So this is Hawkesby so that was Sunday afternoon. Then Monday, Hawkesby comes out with her hubby, and this is the state of the conversation.
Kate, the whole thing's been blown out of all proportion. I have sympathy with that because I feel a wee bit the same way, but I hesitate to just add a but there. It may well be coming in later on this afternoon. If it doesn't, then they have really done their chips on these warnings. I mean, one of the headlines I saw on News Hub was, there will be destruction. That was the headline. If you've ever seen anything more anxiety-inducing in your life, I don't know. So, they seem convinced it's coming our way and it's going to happen. So we shall see.
Later in the show, her husband, Mike Hosking, came on to add his own derision to the mix.
So what we've done is whip ourselves into this extraordinary frenzy. I'm listening to your mate Chris from the Met Service. He's now talking about 100k winds as being like a hurricane.
Well, he described it as ferocious.
Anyone who lives in Wellington, has lived in Wellington, 100k's is a breezy day. You still got an outdoor table at the cafe. I mean, what we've done is we've got ourselves into this mental state now where anything is it.
We panic. But I also think we're in a state now where we want to be told what to do all the time. And we almost enjoy it. It's like, oh, hunker down, don't go to school, don't go to work. It's like we almost enjoy the panic.
So there you go. So what that is, in my opinion, is that's just explicit and outright anti-Jacinda. This bloody Labour has been doing this the whole time, and it's just them trying to freak us out again, Chewy.
You tell me, like, not even just this incident, but why do we need to hear from both Hawkesby and Hoskins?
Well, I think it's because she does the show from 5. She does the show from 5 till 6, and then he comes on at 6, so they do a crossover. I think that's what it is.
So, like, you have basically they're the same person. Like, have they ever had a disagreement on a position on air?
I don't know.
I've never heard of it. So
you've
basically
now got Kerry Woodham
this solid block of people coming from the same worldview with the same opinion.
Well, and then it continues, and then it's Kerry Woodham afterwards, which, as we have identified last week, has just decided to service Leighton Smith's audience, not offer any of her own opinions.
Can we not talk about Kerry Woodham servicing things?
Okay. Well, let's just play some of her audio then, shall we? So this is Kerry Woodham on the Monday.
With Cyclone Gabrielle, nothing has happened really yet. I get why emergency services want this to happen. It means if something happens, kids won't be stranded at school. It means if something happens, the roads are clear for emergency responders to get where they're needed.
Yeah.
But what message does this send to our children?
Oh,
oh my God.
Let's say it together. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Why won't someone think of the children?
Because, if they have 2 days off school, then they've lost a whole year of schooling.
Their
Basically,
education must be sacrificed
yeah,
for the greater good.
their education
And her
sacrificed.
talkback caller couldn't agree more.
As if it's not bad enough, the morons plead it's for the health and safety of our little pockets. What are they going to do next? Say for the counselling available, because we know, like COVID, your children will be very anxious about all the water. They would have seen the puddles the other day and slipped on their bloody BMXs while they were wagging schooler down the skate park, for Christ's sake. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Tim.
Here's what Woodham told the caller
Tim.
complaining his
Oh,
daughter's school was
bastard.
closed on Monday and Tuesday in Napier.
I was
Napier.
madly refreshing that stupid Cyclone app all over the weekend. And I thought, what is the point of doing this? Why?
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Exactly. I don't need to know.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest radio stations and the biggest radio station in the country, with a host who has the privilege and ability to host one of the biggest shows in the country. Why the fuck would I need to be informed? What's the point? I mean, honestly, why would I need to be informed about any of this stuff? You know, this cyclone that's come through and that's killed people and ruined hides. Why would I need to be informed? I mean, give me one good reason why I need to be informed. Like, honestly,
can we just point out as well, like, okay, it didn't hit Auckland dead center, but considering how much trouble they had with just a heavy rainstorm.
Yep.
Like, you want to add hurricane force winds on that. And then we see it hit the east coast. So after it had dissipated, like if it had hit Auckland full force, it would have been stronger. And we're still looking at what's the current death toll at the moment? 11?
Oh, it's going to go up. It's still going up.
It's going to go up, but there are literally dead children. If you want to be flippant about them going to school, put these people in a helicopter and fly them down and stand them in front of some people that have lived through this and tell them it ain't shit.
Chewy, you've got but just remember, Chewy, some of the schools closed, and even worse than that, like 4 months ago, there was ram raids. So Chewy, I mean, ram raids break the windows. They break the windows of stores, and we're going to talk about that 23 and a half hours a day for 6 weeks because ram raids. But you know, the storm that they're now saying is going to cost as much as the Christchurch earthquakes. The cost for this is the same as the Christchurch fucking earthquakes. But ram raids and, you know, kids missing school for 4 days. That's really what's important. We do have more audio, by the way.
I'm glad you've brought up ram raids because that pivots right into what they're talking about now.
Yeah.
2 things. They're all talking about it. Roving bands of armed looters and absolute state of martial law. You've got ACT and New Zealand First both saying we should send in the military for crowd control and crime prevention reasons. And that is headline. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's feeding directly into what the conspiracy guys were saying a couple of days ago. And then you get the police commissioner come out and crime is down. They made 42 arrests.
Yeah.
Which is basically down on what they were doing anyway. But we like, if we're talking about the response, you know what the conversations have been? How can we afford this? How can we possibly afford to put the East Coast back together again? These weren't conversations that happened around Christchurch. It was just, we will put it back together again. That's what we do. People need to remember that national debt, when it comes to something like a disaster response, is someone writing numbers in a book. It doesn't fucking mean anything. You have to rebuild the roads. You have to rebuild the industry. You have to. You just have to do it.
But what we need to do when Mr. Luxon runs the country and solves all the problems is we give a tax break to the top, and then that'll trickle down and fix the roads for us. Because that's how the tax system works. You said that we should, they're going to send in the military. I think we're just going to, right now, what we're going to do is send in the clowns because we're going back to Newstalk ZB. And there is an interesting, this is really interesting, right? And this is part of the thing. I'm fairly passionate about talkback radio. Like, I love it. I really love it. And I love it when it's at its best. When it's at its best is times of extreme sadness, like the death of Princess Diana or someone like that, or times of extreme emergency or the need for public to know the information. Now, have a listen to this clip from RNZ explaining how many people on the East Coast had, or actually might have been Northland, had to rely on Newstalk ZB for their information. And that's one of the things that's most devastating to me about this, is that a medium that I love, Talkback Radio, which could have serviced the country brilliantly of this, had a bunch of fuckwits going on and 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 on about, oh, counseling for children because there's puddles. So this is the next part. So this starts with what TVNZ was saying, and then RNZ will explain what was happening in Northland.
It's very wet. It's very cold. People are being asked to stay off the roads. We know there's a lot of problems with communication. We're having trouble getting people on the phones. We know that one of the big cell phone towers is out. And of course, there is electricity cuts to homes too.
Unfortunately, some couldn't watch that informative, responsible reporting from Bremner and the TVNZ team. People in homes that had lost power could only get the radio, and some were relying on Newstalk ZB for information.
No.
One of Media Watch's listeners, who asked to be named only as Jim, said he could only pick up the talk station signal at his home in Northland. He was alarmed to hear its hosts were more focused on Auckland school closures than the escalating flooding, power outages, and dangerous winds people were experiencing in his area. That obsession with schools persisted into the following day, even as New Zealand woke up to the wreckage left by Gabrielle overnight. Here's Hawkesby's editorial early.
So remember, this is now the hosts know they're wrong. So remember, you can offer an opinion, right? You can say, I don't think, or let's wait and see, or those, you can offer those opinions, but this is now the next day. Yeah. So this is now the moment where they are wrong. So you would expect their response to be, mea culpa, I'm sorry, I got it wrong, let's help you now. That's what you would expect.
Or even just a hard pivot.
The rain's hitting Auckland City now, but yesterday between 8:30 and 3 p.m. when there was hardly any rain or wind, I wondered why kids in all the unaffected areas couldn't have been at school.
Trying to cover a base?
Yesterday turned out to be an average rainy day. Yes, I get it. Precautions.
20 minutes later, TVNZ's Breakfast crossed to reporter Tessa Parker, who delivered the news that landslides had destroyed homes and buried people in Muriwai.
Residents have
received, which is West
the
Auckland,
second emergency alert of
so that's
the
Auckland.
morning. Residents on the right side of the Motutara Road have been told to evacuate to the surf club. That is because there is an increased risk of landslides. Fire and Emergency has already told us that 2 houses have collapsed here in this coastal suburb this morning, and we understand that people are currently trapped.
Both of those trapped people, volunteer firefighters Dave Van Zwanenberg and Craig Stevens, died.
So Kate Hawkesby, Auckland should have been open yesterday. Yes, we know, be prepared. The same morning that out in Muriwai, which is West Auckland's coaches, if you know Piha, it's sort of north of that on the west coast, Black Sand Beach, was looking for lost firefighters. Firefighters, one who died within a slip, one who died of subsequent. And fucking Kate Hawkesby, all she's doing is trying to cover her ass because of the ridiculous thing she said the day before. Yeah. That's all she said. And nothing else about what had happened. It doesn't look that good today, but yesterday I was right. Summary of her conversation. I was right yesterday, but today it's a different day. Not, you know what? I had an opinion yesterday, and I think that opinion may have stood yesterday, but we now know how wrong that was. And when I was listening to that clip again right now, I could feel the fury coming up inside me to do with, again, we talked about this last week, these privileged, wealthy people who get to go up the hill to Remuera or to Newmarket or to Ponsonby and stay in their 2-story brick $5 million house with a full freezer of food, without the fear of not having food in their bellies or food in there, and not having water flooding through, because of course water typically floods through the poorest communities, because the cheapest houses are in the areas that are prone to flood. So yes, wealth can make a difference to who gets impacted by these sorts of things. Not only, yes, lots of big houses fall off cliffs, but primarily the majority of this impacts the lower socioeconomic groups a lot more. And so you've got these people earning literally millions of dollars. I'll tell you a story. I'll talk outside of school. When I was working for Newstalk ZB, Paul Holmes, who is arguably New Zealand's greatest ever broadcaster, right? There's an argument to say that. They pay so much money in this place that he wasn't given a lease car. He was given a Bentley to own. So part of his bonus was a $400,000 vehicle, right? Not a salary. That was a part of his package. So these people who work on these stations, and I would love to have lots of money one day. I hold nothing against anyone for having money. But the reality is, when you have it, you are disconnected from the rest of the world who don't. And to have an opinion based on the idea that you have money, with the bias of the idea that you have money, is disgusting. It's completely missing what is happening in the real world. And yes, of course, if you're worth millions of dollars, you're not going to be in the real world, but not to have the empathy to understand what's happening for other people makes you, in my opinion, the fucking worst kind of radio host or contributor. If you don't have the empathy to understand that those people in low-lying areas are worse off than you, then you should fucking run for the hills, or the station you're hired by should get rid of you and get someone in with empathy, which is never going to happen. That's a personal opinion. Sorry, Chewy, I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, like a soapbox is a good place to be, though. Yeah, I wonder what consequences that there's going to be out of this, and I'll tell you what it will be. It'll be nothing. Like they're just so in their bubble, and it's just that Auckland centric right wing bubble. They know that they don't have to account for the people that aren't in their audience, aren't in their media survey. They're just talking to people that are just going to hum and ha and agree with them, and it's not going to affect them. But the fact that these people were going on, like, what is the problem with being warned? Why is a storm warning suddenly a culture war?
And that's what I was saying, dude. I was having this conversation with someone else about, people who are at the Wellington protest, and it goes like this. Some people who are at the Wellington protest are saying, well, I'm not part of that alt-right, I'm not part of that white supremacist, I'm not part of the anti-vaxxers. But the truth is, why were you there? The truth is, you weren't there protesting the year before when nurses had to get vaccines for polio and for measles. So there is something more as to why you were there last year about a vaccine and about mandates, because there are mandates for people in the military, for people in nursing and doctors now, and have always been. You've never protested those. So you're protesting this because there's something different about it. So don't give me that shit if you're at the Wellington protest. It was nothing to do with, anti-vaxxer or anti-Jacinda or COVID conspiracy. Of course it was, because you weren't there a year ago or 2 years before that protesting that nurses had to be vaccinated against fucking polio. This is the same sort of thing. The reason that this is different is because what these hosts are saying is, this bloody controlling government trying to tell us what to do. So that's the narrative. It's not that we should have warnings about storms. It's that this fucking government doesn't tell me what to do. That's what they're saying, and that's the difference.
I think the funny thing there is when these guys often like to hark back to the good old days. And the good old days was you do what you're told, right? Like it wasn't all individualism. It was all pulling in the same direction. That's the good old days that they remember. And now suddenly it's not.
Yeah.
I think Ava here in the chat made a good point. Yes, we do like to be told what to do in an emergency. Happily. Tell me how to keep my family safe. Tell me how I can help others, and tell me how I can minimize damage to my home.
Well, so let's answer those. How do you keep your family safe? Well, what we're doing this couple of days for safety to keep your family safe is we're closing down schools, right? How you can help others is checking on your neighbors. And how you can minimize damage to your home? Well, I guess there's not much we can do about that for advice, but maybe you can sandbag and maybe you can dig trenches. So in other words, two of those, how do I keep my family safe? And is one of the reasons that the people on ZB were complaining. And I've got Irish blood, and I can get fiery at times, and I can feel it welling up. And I when we start talking about things like this, I can get angry and angry. And I'm sorry if that outburst annoyed anybody, but yeah, the more I talk about it, the more furious I get, because that's what they're saying. They're saying, fuck this government. That's what all of this complaint about these people are being over the top. That like fucking Hosking was like, oh, you know, your mate from Met Service, like it's like saying, oh, geez, your mate from down the road, like they don't know anything. You know, what does your mate know? It's like, well, he's actually the expert coming on your show. You fucking, I can't use those words anymore. I'm totally over it. Let's finish this, and this is probably going to make my head explode. But this is Kerry Woodham the day after. So remember, Sunday afternoon, oh, it's a bit of a thing. Monday, all of them like closing schools. Monday night, apocalypse happened in New Zealand. Tuesday, what happened the next day? Well, you would think that someone would go, I got it so wrong yesterday. What did Kerry Woodham do? The fucking asshole.
Where areas are affected, they could make their own decisions, and where areas are not affected, they too can make their own. So you clearly disagree, and that's absolutely fine. But I just don't believe all of Auckland should be shut down because some suburbs have been terribly affected and some have not. And that is the very nature of
I live
storms.
in the one that's not.
That is the nature of storms. And unless Woodham is sitting on a method to perfectly predict their path, timing, and intensity, then there's an argument that it's better to be safe than sorry.
Bingo. And I'll say this again. I said this the last time that we talked about closing down whole areas. Chewy and I live in Dunedin. Yeah. When it snows in the hills, all of Dunedin gets shut down. And this is why. Because you may work in the city or work in South Dunedin or go to school in North Dunedin, but you live in the hills, so you can't get down. There might be teachers at the intermediate schools down in the non-snowed area who live up the top. There might be people who live down the bottom who work up the top or go to school up the top. So rather than trying to go, oh, we can't really function, our school's down the flat, so we're going to have it open, but we can't really do anything because 60% of our workforce is away, they just shut down all of Dunedin. All the school, if one school closes, basically all of the schools close. That's how it works, because maybe this is the bubble they live in. Well, all my friends live in Remuera because they're all those kinds of people, and we were all okay, and we didn't have to because all of us were all in the same place.
I mean, my housekeeper couldn't come in, which has got me a bit miffed.
Yeah, because she lives in a house down low that got flooded, and so they don't seem to have the idea. I actually, and this is the thing, right? And this is the overarching conversation: is why did ZB en masse buy into this? That's my real question, because you've got at least 4, if not more, hosts, all to start with saying the media are making too much of this, and then the second point was they shouldn't be shutting the schools down, and then all of them, their third point was, well, yes, it's very bad in some areas, but that means yesterday they still shouldn't have been shutting schools down. And it wasn't a host. Like, you can have a rogue host without question. I did that mea culpa earlier about what I'd done before on ZB, where we questioned bird flu. We ended up being right, but we were just questioning it. But it was just us. It was me and Petra having a bit of a chat about it. It wasn't a theme through all the major day parts. It was a couple of part-timers on a Sunday night. This is a theme through all the day parts. And I don't really believe that much in coincidences that make me think, oh, they've all just haphazardly got the same opinion. It feels more directed to me. I could be wrong, but it feels that way, Chewy.
Yeah, and look, just to say, it can happen to anyone. And look, I didn't do this on radio, but like personally, in the early days of COVID, I was known to say things like, it just sounds like a bad flu. Because that was the media that I was consuming and the stuff that I was reading and that sort of thing. And as more information came to light, I was very vocal about, oh, fuck, I'm wrong about that.
Yeah.
Some people, not so much, stayed the course. Stayed with their initial. It doesn't matter when the new information comes in, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Look, yeah. I'll come back to it as well. There's a couple of things that are most egregious to this whole thing for me. The first is these hosts aren't actually, in my opinion, saying this storm is nothing. What they're saying is this government is giving me information. I don't trust this government. And because they did that, they then didn't service the audience well enough. When I was working for ZB when Christchurch happened, I was on air when the first earthquake happened at 4:00 in the morning, right? I was so proud of the work we did at Newstalk ZB for the earthquake. All of the channels.
I've heard some of it, actually. Yeah.
All of the channels, all of the radio stations in Christchurch, all of the frequencies for NZME, all took the ZB feed. So ZM came off air, Hodaki came off air, Radio Sport came off where they all played ZB for from memory, what feels like several weeks, because of the information that we were giving to the nation, but also to keep the people of Christchurch up to date and involved. I don't know what's happened, but in the space of a decade, it's become a right-wing echo chamber of people going, so this is the information, but you know what? This is what it is. This is what it is. Our hate for this government and their messaging rates more highly than our need to feed our audience with good information. So they've elevated their hate for Labour above and beyond the necessity to suck it up, buttercup, and actually provide the best information for the audience. So people in Northland were tuning in like people in Christchurch did when I was there, looking for information and looking for help, and getting fuckwits talking about, well, you know, they shouldn't have, it's just a typical rainy day. They shouldn't have to close schools for that, rather than the information that the people in Northland, the people in Gisborne, the people, you know, in Muriwai actually needed. And that's what it feels like it is.
I remember just radio disaster stories, right? So early in my career, I worked for 4XO here in Dunedin. Just basically, well, it became More FM eventually when they rebranded, but it was very much a middle of the road, family friendly radio station, right? I worked for that network as a copywriter on September 11th. So we were sitting, I remember the station, for like a full station meeting of how do we do this? Do we pretend that everything's normal? Do we have a slightly extended news portion of the hour? But I remember the main radio host going, we need to dump everything. No music, no birthday calls, no ads, no nothing, just news. And because that was the social benefit to that, right? Who cares about the birthday calls on September 11th? Who cares about the car yard advertising? Who cares about the pet patrol at that point when you have world-changing history going on?
Pet patrol, such a radio thing. Battle of the Sexes. We got rid of Battle of the Sexes for the day.
My claim to fame is as I recorded an alternative Pet Patrol sting.
Yep.
You're listening to 4XO's Pet Patrol. If you've lost your pooch or pussy, give us a call.
Your pooch or what?
Pussy. Because cats go missing too, Pat. It's just not dogs.
Yeah. I was on air. I was, just so we know, I think I said this before, I was actually on air when 9/11 happened, working for More FM, ironically, in the middle of the night.
I was trying to write ads that morning. It was fucking horrible. But I think what we're getting to here is something like in a broadcast medium that can cast as big of a net and pass as much information on to people on, let's be honest, some of the more primitive gear. You know, you don't need TV signal, you just need radio signal. They have a social obligation to maybe pull their heads out of their asses and not just offer anti-government opinions when there is a greater social need for their resources at that point. Now they could just look. I'm not expecting them to turn into a paid party political broadcast for Labour.
Yeah,
but they can relay
but vote Labour
information. Sorry,
but vote Labour.
But vote Labour. You know, they could easily just relay information. They just don't have to put an opinion on it because they don't care about their opinion.
Yeah. Hey, look. When you work in radio and you get as frumpy as I just did, then it's called blowing a foo-foo valve. So I think I blew a foo-foo valve tonight, and it's going to happen sometimes. Chewy, I noticed that the chat's been going crazy. I haven't read any of the chat, so I'm sorry. There seems like there's some debate going on in there. Is there anything you want to highlight before we
tonight? To be honest,
yeah. But I think that's it, and I think I'm going to expand on this, and what I find that you have kind of three kinds of people. You have people who think before they speak. You have people who think as they speak, and you have people, our favorite ones, who think after they speak. I'm a think as you speak kind of person, and what I've been talking about tonight, as I'm saying it, is resonating with me, and I'm going to do some more research on it and expand on it as well, because I think that's it. I think that you've got broadcasters who have elevated their hatred for this government more highly than servicing their audience. That's what I think it is, and I'm gonna mull that over and start to look a bit more closely into it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this before we head off. A huge thank you to our patrons, lovely, and thank you for being with us. If you'd like to see more foo-foo valves being blown, then you can head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And also, as I said, KJS, I think, KJS, who joined today, didn't get a chance to get your name up there, but we thank you for being involved, and we appreciate all you guys being on board. You can head to Big Hairy News, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. An announcement for you guys from me. Tomorrow morning, my other podcast, Let's Talk Funny, is dropping. Drops in New Zealand at 6 a.m. Episode
You've
3
shown me clips out of that, and it's a good one.
Ursula Carlson. Have a really good chat with Ursula. Ursula, of course, as most of you will know, is South African. And one of the things I'm always interested in talking to South Africans about who were in South Africa pre-reconciliation, right? One of the things I always am interested in is if you were a 20-year-old living in South Africa under apartheid, how did it feel being a 25-year-old living in South Africa once there was no longer apartheid? Once you'd been separated from the black community and then you were considered equals, how did that actually feel? Me and Ursula talk a bit about that. Sounds like a funny podcast, I know, but amongst some other things as well. So that drops tomorrow. If you look up Let's Talk Funny in Apple. The other thing is it drops straight away if you've already subscribed. I learned this last week. So if you're already subscribed to it, you head to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts and you look up Let's Talk Funny. And remember the apostrophe to find it. Let's Talk Funny, because it's Let Us Talk Funny. Then as soon as it goes out, you will get it. It can take up to 24 hours for Apple to upload it to their store. And so if you're not a subscriber, it can take a bit longer sometimes to receive it. So the best thing to do is to go along to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to Let's Talk Funny. And tomorrow morning, you'll get Ursula Carlson. The previous 2 weeks have been Di Henwood and Paul Ego. There you go, Cherry. There's my shameless plug done. What else?
It was seamless.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Like synergistic marketing strategy.
Synergy. And finally, I said I'd find this photo for you. You want to see it? The beardless me. I promised it. We did the radio tease. Hey, everybody, stick around. After the next ad break, there will be like a song. So here we go. So this is me next to my mum, probably circa 2000, probably, maybe 2000. What was I doing in 2000? No, I was already working in radio. No. What am I talking about? No, 90. No, sorry, 1990. 1990, 1991, 1992. Around then. This is me. And you were talking about floppy hair before, brother.
Yeah. Oh, it was almost like it was government issued, that bloody 90s haircut. Oh, look at that. All right. I've got a Where's Wally for you.
Any comments? This is like a...
It's very floppy.
Cute fella.
What year was that?
Yeah, I moved out of that house when I was 21. So I'm going to be somewhere between 17 and 19, I'm guessing.
Okay.
I left school when I was 17, so maybe it is 17. Maybe that's me at 17.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go with it.
All
I'll
right.
say 17.
Here's mine, and it's a little bit of Where's Wally.
Yep. I'm going to have to go full screen. Now, I'm looking for the ginger, first of all.
Well, the ginger's only in the beard, mate.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Are you the guy front row third from the left?
Front row third from the left. I am not.
No.
This older gentleman, no.
Okay, let me just have a look.
Am I in the front row?
I'm drawn to another one straight away.
Okay. Which row?
Middle row. I'm drawn to third from the right. It's not my final guess. Middle row, third from the right. Yep, I'm drawn to that one.
This guy here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is it you?
That's me.
See when you're buddies.
On my cadets sergeant's course.
Yeah.
And I believe that's 1995.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So there you go. That's where I got my authoritarian streak from.
Right. I feel like we've got a theme for this week. I've got all these photos out. Maybe we should keep doing this. Maybe other people can submit theirs on the Facebook page or something, and we share them tonight as well.
Absolutely. We'll accept all donations of floppy 90s hair. Seems to be the thing.
Oh my goodness. I've just offended people in the chat. Don't do it, Pat. Don't show your beardless face. There's lots of photos out there with me and beardless faces, unfortunately. All right, team. I think we're done. It was a different show tonight.
Was that from Rob Burney?
Yeah.
I'll remind Mr. Rob Burney there that I have a photo of him shaving his beard off. For a movie role that he had to wear a fake beard for.
So he had a beard, he shaved it off, and then he put a fake beard on.
Correct. So people in glass houses, Rob Burney. Glass houses, mate.
All right, guys. And if you are listening to the audio podcast of this on Apple Podcasts of this particular one, you'll have to jump on YouTube or Spotify to have a look at some of the images we've been showing, because they're video only. It's very hard to show an image on an audio podcast. Yeah, I was going to say I saw that as well. Curse you, Joey.
I have the receipts.
All right, team. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. A bit of a higgle to piggity kind of show. I apologize about that on some level, but on another level I don't, because that's sort of how we roll. And yeah, let's figure out a way to absolutely screw over those assholes who are controlling our radio media world and servicing no one well. Oh, actually, you know what? I want to say one thing, because people have been mentioning it. Where's V? I saw some messages from V in there as well, because we want to give credit where credit is due. V was mentioning, and I can remember what it was. There we go. Marcus Lush doing really well with Gabrielle. So we've been deriding of Newstalk ZB tonight. We've actually been more deriding of
Isn't he a fish out of water there, though?
Some of their hosts, and also wondering if there's a narrative going through, and also there we go here as well. Tim Roxburgh as well. So, Tim Roxburgh's a beautiful man.
I know
Garrett says that too.
And now we're coming back in again. Yeah. I just want to make 2 points, right? Is it a more interesting stage, or like, what's a better idea? To have a station where you're all talking, like a talkback station where you're all talking to the same demographic, the same type of audience that has the same point of view? Or can you have one where you have hosts with alternative points of view? No. And then that promotes discussion with your mixed audience.
No, you can't.
You've done this. You don't think it can be done.
It's much like the races, Chewy. They should never mix. And I'll tell you why. Because the people who listen to Drive, they want to come back and listen to Breakfast. The people who listen to Nights, they want to listen to Breakfast. The person who listens to Days, they want to listen to Drive. And what you're describing is, in my opinion, podcasting, that you can pick and choose what you want.
That's fair.
When you're driving your courier van around, you won't tune in from 9 till midday with the lefty host and then stay from midday till 4 with the right wing host. It doesn't happen. And
so it's just because of their metrics then.
It's not how you make money, so it's not what you do. Now, could you do that? Yeah, and look, this is going to sound really, really arrogant, like really, really arrogant, and I know that. I think one of the reasons I no longer have the opportunities in talk radio is even though I identify as a huge lefty, I'm incredibly balanced, and I can see perspectives from all sides, and I'm not very much one to leave blood on the floor. You know, I'll talk things through, and if you can understand your position, then I'm happy to hear you out. And I don't think that's what talkback shows in general want. And the ones that do, I don't know if they're going to rate. I just don't know. And that sounds really defeatist. So what we have to do, let's be honest, what we have to do is we have to get as many people along listening to this who want to hear our perspectives. And they're not going to get a show that comes up after us with a counter perspective. If they want that, they go and get another podcast or another live stream that does the other. And so they listen, they get up in the morning and they download our audio podcast at Apple Podcasts, and they rate and review it while they're there. And then they also download, I don't know if Matthew Hooton's got a podcast, but something similar, Matthew Hooton's, and they listen to that after he listens, and then they can pick and choose what they want. What you find most of the time, even in the left, let's be honest, is you get echo chambers where people will listen to what they want to listen to, feed at the right time of day. You would think I'm an alt-right sympathizer, because I do watch and listen to everything. I have Matt Walsh videos popping up on my screen. I have the Vanguard boys popping up on my feed. I have TYT. I have Dave Rubin. I have everything popping up on my feed because I really do consume a lot of everything. Because a part of it, and let me be really clear, and this is going to sound again quite arrogant, is unless you know your enemy, you are ineffective. So I consume a lot of stuff. And again, I almost hate talking like this, but I guess I'm just being honest. Why the fuck not? Is one of the reasons I do is so you don't have to. Lovely person watching right now. When it's salient and it's worth bringing to the table, we will bring it to the table. And that's one of the reasons I do it. The other reason I do it is because I'm a media whore and I listen to everything.
I have a solution.
Sure.
We're the solution. But the
other
solution.
You and me do a talkback show?
The solution to Newstalk ZB is that we should nationalize it. But yeah, look, hold a comparison up, right? What Newstalk ZB have done in the last week, or during the cyclone, and what a public broadcaster, Radio New Zealand, have done.
Yeah.
Contrast those two things. What is a greater benefit to the country?
Yeah,
I think
100%.
I think I don't care where you stand on the political spectrum. If it can objectively weigh those two things up, I think I know where you're going to come down. Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, brother. I think that's right. The unfortunate thing is we are funny. It's a Department of Conversation. That's where it kind of came from, the Ministry of Talk.
Kiwi Talk.
You know what, Chewy? This is a radio station. One of the talk shows should hire you and me, if to do nothing else but a weekly show. They really should. It would actually be really good programming, and it would rate. We'd have to stop saying fuck and shit and cunt quite so much, but it really honestly would. It would rate, or someone should have the balls enough, because what the talk stations are doing at the moment is they're trying to compete with each other. And they're trying to compete with, this is the commercial talk station. They're trying to compete with each other, both doing conservative opinion. Now, I'm not talking about mornings or drive, although drive and mornings on ZB are very right wing, but the actual opinion shows, and not Marcus Lush, but the opinion shows during the day are trying to compete for the same audience, which is a right wing conservative audience. There's low hanging fruit out there, baby bears, and it's called centrists and it's called left wingers, and no one else is trying to provide for it. If a radio station said, hey, Pat and Chewy, I think we should give this a go for this year. How would you like to do, midday till 2 p.m., Monday to Friday? I reckon it would really rate, and I reckon they should really do it. Sadly, no one's going to be brave enough to do it, even though some places it's worth giving it a risk for. But they're not going to do it. So we'll stay here, and you'll keep consuming us when you want to consume us. And what you'll do as our ally is you'll tell others about us, and you will let people know, and you will share our shit. And when you hear opinion you like, you'll share it. And you'll take things you hear on this station, either from the station on the show, either from us or from our guests, and you'll reverberate it around the water cooler, if there is such a thing anymore. And then you'll direct people back to us. And, eventually we'll start getting more cut through. I mean, we're getting cut through now. We had about 20,000 views last month, which is not huge when it comes to a YouTube channel, but it's also bigger than, a lot of the small radio stations from around, like it's bigger than any Dunedin radio station. So we'll keep plodding along, and I think we're finding that there's a desire for this and a need for this, and we'll keep doing it. And
we're aiming to peak for the live election debate
debates. So we're basically just hanging. Look, let's be honest, we're just hanging on. We're just hanging around for the debates. That's that. So actually, Chewy, if they did do a snap election, that could be quite useful. Hang around for the debates, and then we can wrap this thing up. Maybe. All right. You're not going to tangent no more, yeah?
No, I've done it. We were half out the door, and I was like, "Oh, let's go back in." No,
all right. Yeah. No, and I think the reality, Chewy, is it's financial. And someone's actually said it, and I don't think it's a grift, but Gareth has actually said it, easier to grift to the right. Advertising is not necessarily a grift, but I think it's easier to sell to the right as well. And I think that people who want to advertise to the right are bigger companies with more money, because it's unquestionable that there's more money on the right in politics and in advertising than on the left. So, yeah, Paul, we are going to live stream the debates. That's what we're going to do. We're going to watch the debates with with drinking game, probably. Yep. I'll have to count my calories that day.
Lock it in. Vodka's got no calories.
We'll be back. It makes me vomit though. We'll be back tomorrow morning, and I think we'll be back from 9 p.m. I think tonight we're supposed to be a bit later than this, but I will be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for you. Basically, this becomes our therapy session. So the checks in the mail to everyone who watched tonight for our therapy session, and we will catch up with you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of the Big Hairy News. All right, team. Hooroo.
Thanks, folks.